Hello, everybody. I hope you're all well. Um, so today, what I'm going to talk about is sociolinguistics, and probably I'm going to focus on phonetics or maybe sociophonetics, and this intersects with pragmatics. So that's the main point I'm getting at. But I'm going to kind of start off generally with sociolinguistics, and rather than me talking, yeah, I'm going to get you to be talking a little bit about points, yeah. Um, let me just see. I need to check one thing. Okay. Yeah, we'll just go straight into me talking a little bit about the kind of sociolinguistics, and then gradually you're going to kind of be thinking about the situation in your region and see how it parallels with the study that I done in my region. So that's kind of where we're going. So yeah, there will be lots of time for talking, but let me talk for a little bit and let me share my screen while I do this. Okay. So the focus of my part will be, obviously it's phonetics, sociophonetics. So how people speak and their sound that they use, particularly maybe the vowels and the consonants that they use, and how this does sociolinguistic work. How it not only just communicates a linguistic meaning, but it communicates a social meaning. And that's basically what sociophonetics for me is anyway. And because it has a social meaning and it's to do with the implications that they want to invoke in conversation, there's a huge pragmatic element to my study anyway. And you can see the subtitle there is how sport club members do authority through language. So that's really the pragmatic element of it. Okay, and we'll get to that. Okay, I see Dina has raised her hand.
Oh, hello, Fergus. How are you doing today?
Good, you.
Oh, great. I just asked you if this presentation is available on the website because I cannot see any of the files.
No, there's no, and there's a reason why, because there's a lot of graphics, and because
Okay.
there's lots of graphics, it's a big file. But what I'm going to do after, I'm going to email
Okay. Okay.
the full PowerPoint from yesterday and
Because I'm really enthusiastic today to just join the discussion with you.
great.
I enjoyed a lot yesterday. Okay, so back to you one more time.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, that's no problem, Dana.
I'll just jump in. It's Lorna here. Yes, we'll be able to share everything. All of the PowerPoints from all of the classes will be shared, and you'll definitely get a copy. And Nicola's around as well to help with that if you have any issues, if you miss one. But Fergus will be able to email you directly. I think he has your email addresses. And if not, the office will send that out. So back to Fergus in lovely Ireland.
Great, thanks, Lorna. So yes, so but just to give you, this is my PhD study. That's finished maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And it's a sociolinguistic study. But what I'm going to do is just maybe introduce first is the waves of social linguistics, because I'm not sure if you are familiar with this, but it's just in any type of study, any type of field, usually we see progressions and different what we call waves, like there's at least 3 waves in social linguistics. So I'm just going to cover that. And then I'll introduce my study and research questions and the data analysis, but there will be lots of you discussing your own context in between these 3 main points, okay? If you are interested in social linguistics, just generally, I would recommend that it's a huge field and there's so many disparate elements coming into it that it's hard to know where to begin. I would say this paper by Eckert, one of the leading sociolinguist, is she talks about the 3 waves and how meaning has been located. I'm just going to guide you through what these 3 waves are. The first one up here is a study from 1966, and it was done in New York City, one particular section of New York City. And he meticulously gathered maybe speech from 90 people. But you can see that on the horizontal axis here, there's interview style and reading style. So he would have just talked in general conversation and then have an interview with people, and then a reading style. He would have compared how they realize one consonants, th, like tent, the 90 people into classes. I'm just gonna wait till my internet comes back. Yeah. So as I said, he split. He got the speech from 90 people in 3 styles: casual, interview, and reading style. And then he split the speakers according to class. If it's he had a very like their education, where they live, their income, and he split them into lower class, working class, and middle class. And he did find a correlation in terms of those of the middle class tend to use this consonant, this variant of the consonant, a lot less than those in the working class and lower class. So this was the first wave, and this particularly in 60s and 70s, 1960s and 1970s. So we're talking 50 years ago, that this was how people conducted sociolinguistic studies. Whether you can actually, whether it's possible to split people according to class is a discussion point, which I'm not going to talk about. But I know that there's been a good study in Egypt, Habib, but he went much more than just measuring their income and their class, their education, but who they talk to and what they do, and this gave a much better picture of what the sort of people they are. And this kind of leads into wave 2, which is down at the bottom left. Okay, so this is more groups and what people do. So if you see the bottom, you have burned out burnouts, regular burnouts, jocks. These are 3 groups of people in a high school in America. And they looked at different variables, and they can, like the jocks, it means they're very athletic and they take a big interest in their studies. These are high school students, Then burnouts, maybe they burn out, they don't really care. And then you have the burned out burnouts, which is they just committing criminal offenses, just don't really care about anything. And you can probably see the difference in the realizations. Okay, you can probably see negation is one of those, like I didn't do nothing, a double negative, right? So you can probably see the jocks don't use it, whereas the regular burnouts use it to a certain extent, whereas the burnouts use it to a huge extent. It's the black line, right? Okay, so so that would, and this was, as opposed to their class, it's who are their friends and what do they do in their free time. And that, in this study, was a big indicator of the speech that they use. So we've gone from wave 1 is what class you are, to wave 2, who are your friends and what do you do. And then wave 3 was looking at the individual. And in terms of the individual, we mean, if we look at the graph, the bar chart here, on the bottom right, this is the analysis of one speaker. He just put a microphone, and he carried the microphone all around him for the whole of the working day and after the day. So this was like a creaky voice. Hey, you guys, and the way it's the pitch. This particular one's measure the duration. So hey, you guys. So it's quite long, right? So and this particular speaker is a trainee doctor. So you can probably see when he is speaking to his patient, it's quite short, right? On the phone with his father, okay. This speaker's name is Heath. He's homosexual, but he's not out with his father, okay. So he kind of just realizes just a regular talking to his father type of tone. The one on the left, the barbecue, is the barbecue with his good friends, close friends, where he is most definitely out as a homosexual, and he's very much more expressive in his voice. So hey, you guys, and so you can see it's much longer. So we've gone from wave 1 to talking about what class you are and how that indicates what speech you use, to wave 2, the type of groups you are, okay, and the type of groups and how that indicates. And then you as an individual, on a day-to-day, on a moment-to-moment basis, what language do you use? Okay, so these are just to give you a basic background to social linguistics and the type of language that is used. Okay, I see Yamna has raised her hand. Talk to me.
Yeah, so hello, doctor. Well, actually, I do have a question here in terms of the homosexual example. So, do you think that the kind of gender and the sexuality, maybe if he's a trans or something like that, this might affect the way he pronounce or she pronounces the words or the sounds?
Possibly. I don't think in this context though. I know there's a good lots of background in this situation, and I think it's this Heath. I think he's just he would speak close to, in the phone and the patient situation, he's speaking close to a standard realization of this consonant. But then when he's in the barbecue with his friends, it's very non-standard, and it's a variant that is very much indexed to a kind of a gay expressive identity. So yeah, you could go into physical characteristics and things like that, but I would think this, I think in any case, in any form of social linguistics, you're looking at identity, and that's the central examination of um, any of all of these type of studies. It's all about identity. So here it's just expressing, but the interpretation here, the central interpretation here is that the reason for the difference is that they are expressing their identity, or they are expressing one of their identities. So the first two on the phone and the patient, it's this type of professional identity, whereas the barbecue is where they are talking with their friends, and it's a very expressive type of identity that they're trying to put across, and they use language as one part of that identity performance. So that's a huge part of kind of what we'll get into a lot later, is identity performance.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically it's like the language production, the sounds production is based on the identity, either it's gender identity or social identity, right?
Yes. Yeah. And it's,
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
and that's a central concept, is one word that many people used in terms of this is social actors. Okay. Okay. So you could even think the different acts or performances you have to perform in your daily life. Okay. So I have my son in here, and I'm going to be talking to him. I'm going to be helping him out with his sports later on. Okay, so I'm going to be speaking to him in a certain way. I'm going to make sure that he understands the type of sports that he's playing, and I'm going to speak to him in a maybe fatherly way. Okay, then I'm going to talk to my daughter maybe in a slightly different way. She's doing a bit of art today, so I'm going to be helping her with that. So I'm going to be probably speaking in a different way there. Okay, then I'm going to be talking to my wife, and we're going to be we're going to start the painting job. So we're going to have maybe a different perspective. After that, I'm going to meet my friends. We're going to go to a sports match. I'm going to start shouting at the players to encourage them. It's going to be completely different way of speaking. So you see, as a social actor, you're performing different performances, and the different acts or the different roles that you play will influence the way you speak. And I'll give you probably a few examples of that later. Yeah. And it's that's kind of where we're going at there. Now, let me see where I am. Okay. Okay, so that's the introduction to sociolinguistics. Okay. And we're talking about linguistic variation. Okay. So in this case, we're going to, in the Dublin context, to give you a simple understand, we're going to do word final T, for example. So left, right. So there's different ways to realize that. Okay. There is Rui, which is a glottal. Yeah. It's kind of I'll give you the indexes of that later. Then there's a more standard right, which you would probably hear a newscaster use, or a more standard speech. And then there's maybe, which is one that's often used in Dublin, is you fricate the T, right. And it's often phrase final. So there's three variants. Okay, so that's three types of linguistic variation. And what I would argue is I know this may take you a while to get into, so I'm going to repeat this a couple of times. but it's basically, it's culturally grounded semiotic practices. Let me just unpack that for you, okay? So maybe it's semiotic practice. Semiotics just a sign, okay? So I may, when I am, if I choose to use right or right or right, that's a sign for me that I'm doing something with the language. And maybe I may not get the message across, but I'm signaling to other people as a message, okay? And it's culturally grounded, and you have to maybe understand the culture to understand the particular nuances or maybe indexes that we're getting at, okay? So I'm not going to actually tell you all of the indexes because I don't want to I want you to maybe think of your own context first before I explain the full thing. But maybe what I want to say is that if it's culturally grounded, there's at least 3 levels of culture that we're talking about. Okay. So if we're talking about, we'll start from the bottom, the deep purple. Micro, it's the interactional position. What message am I trying to send to speaker? Then I'm talking my interlocutor. So if I'm talking to my wife, okay, let's do this. Let's decide what type of paint we're getting. Okay. I might get a little bit impatient. Okay. Or just to push the thing on. Whereas with my son, I may be a bit more encouraging. So those type of interactional positions, that's where kind of one level where we see linguistic variation. Then we're looking at meso, which is in the middle, which is kind of, I'll get back to that in a minute actually. Then we're talking about macro level, the broad level, the class, gender, broad constructs. And then you have in the middle, meso, which is like social groups. We have linguistic markets. So it's more getting to the level 2 or wave 2 parts where it's kind of not gender or class, and it's not micro, it's not what's happening in the conversation, it's in between. Probably social groups is probably the best example of meso. So maybe you can come back, I would come back to this that later, okay? There are social realities which we need to consider when we're looking at linguistic variation, okay? So and it can be quite complicated, and I'm not going to talk about this now because it's too complicated to give you. But I'll give you the basics of my study now, and then I'll before I get into the details, I want to maybe pass it on to you to just to open up the discussion a little bit, okay?
I have a question. Can I ask you something?
Go ahead.
Okay, back to the previous slide. You said that yeah, culturally grounded semiotic practices. My question is, why did you choose the word semiotic? You could have chosen linguistic practices, social practices. I don't know. I just need to understand the usage or the reference for this word
That's
in
no
this
problem.
context.
I could have used linguistic practices, but then that doesn't indicate, you said you could use social. You didn't, I didn't indicate, linguistic would not fully indicate that that there's a social meaning found in the linguistic variation. So that's why I didn't use linguistic. I could have used social, and most definitely that there is social meaning in the linguistic variation. But we know it's social linguistics, we know it's social variation, we know it's social meaning. But what we want to say, it's a particular type of social meaning. It's coming back to the performance. So it's coming back to, I am using this type of language to give a signal to people that there is social meaning. So it's the signal, it's the sign there. Okay.
Okay, so the using the signs here is combined with the linguistic
Yeah.
markets. Is that what you mean? Yeah,
Yes, in a way.
you
Yeah. But
combine both of them. Yeah.
yeah, so it's social. So the social is the three levels of it. That's the social reality there. Okay. But
Mm-hmm.
then probably I'll come back to this at the end, and I'll maybe see if this is clearer after we go through all of the details of the study.
How actually this triggers a lot of ideas in my mind and brings many other more examples, which I would like to share with you, but later on at some point.
You are going to, and
Yeah.
that's the whole purpose of today. Okay, the
Okay.
presentation I'm giving you is just kind of a brief overview of my PhD study, but then in intersected into those are lots of questions for you. Well, this is my context. What's your context? So let's get there. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not no straight. Keep on. Please do interrupt me anytime because it's good to get feedback. Okay. Let me just see actually. Yeah. So we're coming up to here. Just to quickly outline. I this was it was 10 years ago when I started. She wasn't my PhD supervisor at the time. She was maybe a year or two later, but she said, okay. And at that time, I was living in Japan, and she said, okay, you're going to be back maybe in Ireland, maybe for 2 months a year, but you're going to collect linguistic data, so you're going to have to find a place that is easy for you to collect, and you're going to have to, what I knew that I wanted to do maybe a second wave or a third wave study. I wanted to look at a group or maybe individuals and how they interact with groups. So I needed to find a place that was easy for me to access. And I chose a sports club because when I was young, I was very interested in sports, and I still am. And I conducted in a sports club, my local sports club that I've moved back. I'm back in Ireland now, and since I've moved back, I've become heavily involved in the club again. But it was a place for me that I could really understand the context, so that's why I chose it. And just to give you a brief context, this is a map of Ireland here. I don't know. Can you see my mouse?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, you can see my mouse. Great. So this is the green, the darker green. That's County Dublin, the capital. So it's up here. That's Dublin City here. Trinity College is just about there. I'm here, so that's where we are. Okay, and I decided to work in a sports club, and like I was coming back and I was training with the people and I was playing games with them and maybe socializing with them after games. So it was only really possible for me to do that with male only teams, because after you play a game, typically you would take a shower and then you go home, or you maybe socialize afterwards. So it wasn't possible for me to do that with female only teams. So I done it in a male only context, right? Okay, and these are the two games. This is Gaelic football and hurling Irish games. If you ever come to Ireland, go and see them in the National Stadium, Croke Park. Two big games on Saturday and Sunday actually there. So so my research question evolved to be, how do men in male only environments make use of language to perform identities, right? So that was my my research question. Now I just want to turn over to you, and I presume most of you are in Egypt, so maybe I just want to put over to you. Maybe you can be thinking about, these are possible questions. You obviously won't be able to answer all of them, okay? But what are your instincts, or what are your thoughts about any of these questions in your context? So how do men in male-only environments make use of language to perform identities? Okay, so we're talking about two.
Yeah.
I answer the first question?
Okay.
Sorry, you see, there's two people talking.
Yeah, that's me. I'll be very, very quick. I think I have an idea about the first question. I think men in male-only environments tend to be more aggressive, more obscene. They use words to assert their masculinity and so on. And I tend to see the difference if a man is talking to a man and then he's talking to a girl. So yeah, I think in male-only environments they use profanity, not profanity, but I mean language that cannot be used in front of women and so on.
Okay, so that's kind of where I was getting at. Would anybody like to talk to me? Because it's particularly the third one. How do women in female-only environments make use of language to perform identities? Reem.
Hi, Professor.
Hi.
Actually, I'll answer the question. How do women in mixed gender environments make use
Go
of
ahead.
language?
Go ahead.
Because actually, in Arabic, I'm talking about Arabic now. In Arabic, we have a feminine word for doctor and for other things. However, in mixed environments, in mixed gender environment, we tend to use the masculine word so that we are equal and just to show equality. So although we have a word that refers to a feminine profession, for example, doctor, but however, we use it even in for example, as a doctorate in the university, as a professor in the university, as a physician, as whatever, but to show equality and we are on the same ground, we use the masculine word.
Yeah, okay. Great. So anybody else want? Go on, keep going.
However, there is a tendency to use the correct Arabic form of the language now. So it's debatable between professors in the university which one is to use. So for example, the word dean, we have two alternatives of the same word. However, when we address a female dean, we use the same we use the same male word for her. The same thing for a governorate, the same thing for authority words or occupations.
And I think, Reem, what you're getting at is a central part of social linguistic enterprise is language change, right?
Yes, it is.
If you looked at 50 years ago and you used one particular form, they would probably be very angry with you, right? Possibly. Or
yes.
they would be
yes.
offended, right? But now
Yes,
that's
correct.
changing, right?
Correct.
And then maybe in 20 years, if you use it, people won't think anything, right?
That's true.
So that's where you're seeing language change happening, right? And
yes, I want to add something here, Doctor, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Yeah, for example, here, I just want to answer the first question. So when we talk about how do men in male-only environments make use of language to perform identities, so here, talking about being offended or anything, when, for example, when a group of males are talking together and one of them sounds like
like womanish a bit, you know, like using maybe smooth sounds or voice or some words that are specifically used by females or anything like that. So it's a kind of if you want, for example, to offend him, so you're going to say, oh, why you are talking in a girlish way or in a womanish way, are you a gay? So this is like an offending word, you know, here in, I mean, in the community, in the Egyptian community.
I think you may have opened up what we call the Pandora's box, and because the minute you open that, the hands raised up. Somebody else want to respond to that? Pansy, I haven't talked to you before.
Okay, hi.
Hi.
I think also men's environment, men, they always seek solidarity.
Okay.
However, women always seek to be prestigious.
Okay.
Men, or women, they try to overlap each other, while men, women, they more like to interrupt each other.
Okay. So, and you're getting at the pragmatics and turn taking there, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Very interesting. Okay.
Thank you.
Mama. No, we had. Oh, maybe I think it was Reem. She mentioned smooth sounds. So can anybody talk to me? What are smooth sounds? And what is the index of smooth sounds? Anybody, open your microphone and talk to me.
It's like less rough, you know.
Rough. Okay.
Yeah.
So this would be like a vowel or a consonant?
Yeah, I guess it's in the pitch itself.
Pitch, intonation.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you give me an example? Off the top of your head?
Okay, so
you could speak. You can speak Arabic. It's okay.
Yeah. I'm trying. So, for example, when I say ايه يا عم انت رايح فين دلوقتي, okay, this is male-ish, okay. So when a male is trying to talk in like less rough way, so he will say ايه انت رايح فين دلوقتي, okay. So this is a kind of you know, change or variation between one male and another, and if a male talks that way, so he is going to be considered womanish or like girlish kind of boy or something like that. I don't know how they approach it, but basically they call it gay, unfortunately. I'm sorry for that.
Okay, that's okay. Yeah. Well, no, it's not okay, but that's what they say. Okay.
Can I say something?
You most certainly can.
I'd like to answer the question, how do women in mixed gender environments make use of language to perform identities? Actually, I'd like to talk about a very famous scholar of translation studies, since I'm specialized in translation studies, and she's called Juliana House. And I like very much her studies on translation studies. And when I read any book written by this scholar, I noticed that she refers to the translator by using the pronoun she.
Okay.
She doesn't use the neutral pronoun they, for instance, or he or she, but she sticks to using the pronoun she when she writes about the translator. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Good. Okay. And Rahab, I like your comment there. Men tend to take the lead in presence of women. Their language reflects that attitude. So this is really does very neatly tie in to what I'm going to talk about. Okay. We're going to have a little bit of more questions to you. Well, maybe what I'm going to do now is I will introduce some more details about my study. Okay. And as I done yesterday, I'm not going to take a break in the middle. I'm going to go straight through to let me just check my time. So it's a be about 2:30, 2:40. So I'm just going to go straight through if that just to let you know. Okay. Okay. So let me give you basic details of the study. So we know it was a sociolinguistic ethnographic study of a sports club. Ethnographic means I went in and I tried to understand the daily life of the club. Okay. And it helped very much because I was a member of the club before. I had lived in Japan for about 10 years at the time. So I was kind of coming back. But even when I came back on holidays, I often spent time down the club. So it was just me coming back to the club. So I understood the club very well. So ethnography tries to understand the context, understand the situation very well by spending time with people. Okay. And so, as I mentioned, I would have done a lot of training with the people and I would have spent a lot of time socializing with them. So a huge part of my data collection was ethnographic observation. Like the first training session that I ever done, I was walking out, I was getting ready, and I just observed people interacting. And everybody was making jokes and making fun of everybody. It was expected that immediately you walk out train, oh, what's the story? I saw you last week. Yeah, you didn't play well in that last match last week. Oh, you played better than you. And immediately there's banter. There's people making fun of each other. It's not serious, but they're making fun of each other and making jokes. They often make jokes about themselves. Okay. So this type of observation was really important for me. And then after maybe 6 months, this led to interviews and we call it interviews, but in reality, it was like a chat between friends because they were friends at the time and some of them were old friends, some of them were new friends. And it was just me sitting down in a room for 1 hour and just talking about the club and talking about different things. Okay. And as I mentioned, the humor was a huge part of the interaction between the people on these teams. So I said, I'm going to have to get this humor. But if you put down a microphone and somebody said, okay, please use humor, it's not going to be realistic. So the only way that I thought we could do it was just to put microphones on people while they were playing a match. And also, sometimes as I mentioned, there's a national stadium in Dublin. So if we walk there from where I am, it takes about 90 minutes. So on a big game, some of the lads would often walk there. And this is a male-only situation, and they're really, really excited because they're going to a big game. And they would often be making fun or saying quite bad things about the other team just because they're excited. I don't think they meant it. But so I really, really got into that type of free recording and I used that for humor. Okay. I see some people have raised their hands. Is there a question you want to ask?
Yeah, I do have a question concerning the free recordings. So, like, how does it like take place, and how do you take the consent of the people if they are free recordings? So I guess that the people whom you are recording to have to be spontaneous a little bit. So, how are you going to like to get this sense of being spontaneous and taking the consent?
It's a good question. So they would have, for example, if where we walked along the river, up to the stadium, which takes about 90 minutes. Maybe at 2 months before this, I had done an interview with them and they had consented. And also at the bottom of the consent form is, if you wish, I may record you in a social situation. And they tick that box. Yeah. And then I was talking to them maybe on the Thursday before the match on the Sunday. He says, oh, you're walking in. Do you mind if I walk in with you? And maybe I would just put a microphone on you and you can talk. He said, yeah, that's no problem. At this time, I was good friends with them. Yeah. So, and then they, of course, many of them, they knew that there was 3 people who used the microphone. They knew that they were being recorded, and parts of it, they were conscious, but after 30 minutes, they got very used to it. And plus, they got very excited because where I live in a suburb and there's lots of green, but then after about 45 minutes, you're getting into more urban city. And then oh, and then so I'm just checking my internet connection there. But so we know after 45 minutes they're getting excited about a game, and then they know they're getting into the game, and they're just getting so excited, and they're having animated conversations that they just forget about that they're being recorded. And plus they knew that this conversation, it won't be shared. I'm not going to share the recording on the internet or anything. So there was lots of trust there, and they know they're not saying anything that's going to incriminate them in any way. So it was good. Okay. And actually, just maybe feeding onto that, we have in social linguistics is what we call the danger of dead question. So this was used by Leboeuf in New York. And this was when he wanted what he called vernacular speech that people use in New York naturally. It's kind of the speech of New York, for example, okay, on a particular type of New York, in a ghetto in New York. And the question was, have you ever nearly died? And then they would get really excited. Yeah, sometimes and they would get really excited. And then they would forget that they're being recorded. Okay, so it is spontaneous. And someone tried to do this actually they used that question in Belfast in Ireland, where maybe 20, 30 years ago, there was quite a lot of conflict there. And this was nobody really liked that question. So, you had to find what is the appropriate question so people speak spontaneously. So in my interview,
get excited, you mean?
Yeah, in my interviews, the question was not, oh, have you ever died? Was, tell me, this is the club. So tell me about the club. They won the first time they won the championship. This club is 90 years old. So they won their first championship about 20 years ago. And it was a special time for the club. And there was old men on the field and they were crying because they never thought they would see the club win a championship. And that was the danger of that question for me. Then they just forget everything and they just think about the great memories. And then they just speak very, very naturally. And so again, the free recordings is they're speaking very naturally because they're getting very excited also. So I hope that answers your question there.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay. So
Fergus, you know what? In Egypt,
yeah.
You can do the same research in a bigger model because men usually watch football matches in cafeterias, in cafes.
Yeah.
So they gather 6 on a table. So So actually, you could get this research in a bigger mode, you know.
Yeah, maybe a
Instead of-
cross-cultural study. That would be amazing.
yeah.
Could. And the thing about this is, I'm as we go on with the study, if I'm not sure how much I can get because I have a lot of content to talk about, but it doesn't really how much we get. But the thing about these is you could do this anywhere, really. Okay, I know that one of my favorite studies was done in what they call a mom and pop store, a very, very small store in a small village in the south part of America, United States of America. And this was just this is where people gathered, and this was their social setting. And she just kept on going there and got to know the people, and she kept on. She spent maybe over time. She collected data over 20 years, and the people got to know her. And she got to know people's family and everything. So you only my point is that you could do really anywhere, you know. This type of ethnography it really gets into the social scene, the social setting, and then not only linguistic studies, but you can get into
I have another question, if you don't mind. I'm so sorry that I do have lots of questions because this topic is really interesting for me. I love Irish English so much. So yes, while I was walking in Dublin streets, what I have discovered actually and what I've noticed, I'm not sure if my observation would be accurate or not, but what I've observed, actually, what I've noticed is that towards the north, like in the wealthy areas, people tend to talk more of closer to the British accents, while in the central of Dublin and in less wealthy areas, people tend to talk more of like closer to an American accent. I know that American accent is basically influenced by the Irish language, the Gaelic language. So yes, does that have any interpretation or reason behind this issue, or my observation is wrong?
Yeah, that's a very interesting observation, and there's no if that's something that you believe, I don't think it can be wrong for you. Interesting, but the stereotype would be over the south side. Yeah, it's posher basically, and I'm going to get into a little bit about that. Okay. And yeah, there is certain connotations it's with a British accent. Okay, interesting. You mentioned the American accent because maybe that's a lot would consider that younger people, maybe under 25, would be closer to an American accent, and as opposed to a traditional or Irish accent or Irish stand.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed actually that now people in America in specific are tend to have very strong reference, and they really want to always characterize themselves and categorize themselves as Irish or Americans with Irish roots. They are now having a very strong identity in terms of their Irish roots, even if their roots are from the very
200 years
it's
ago, yeah. Oh well, that's something that and I think that's maybe reflective of American society probably, because it's a very multicultural place with it's a melting pot, as they say. But people, it's identity performance really, particularly if you go to places like Boston or places of New York, or even places in San Francisco, where there's been tradition of Irish neighborhoods. So That's not only for Ireland, that's Italian. People say I'm Italian when same point, their family is Italian, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 generations ago. So yeah, that's maybe reflective of American society. We may be getting like that in Ireland, maybe in 50 years later, because we've had a huge influx of people over the last 20, 30 years. So we think about that, yeah. Maybe let me get on to data analysis, okay? What I'll only talk about is one realization of the vowel. I talked about the word final T. I'll probably talk about the price vowel. So that's the vowel in between or and C in price, I. So price, okay? There's probably different ways to say it. Phonetically, you could say it's high and front, okay? Which if you look at it means it's up, your tongue is up here. High and front means it's high in your vocal tract. This is your vocal tract here, okay? And so it's high and front. That's where your tongue is when you say it's I, okay? Or oi. That's kind of, and then you have a more back, and it's back and retracted, okay? So you could probably say that's I, where it's a bit more posher, it's a bit more British if you like. So, but that's kind of where we're going. And maybe just to give you a context of Dublin. And this is well, not a famous, but a Irish television show, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, but these were 2 brothers separated at birth, where one on your left in the blue, he was brought up in quite a disadvantaged area of Dublin, whereas the one in the pink was brought up in quite a very a rich area of Dublin. And they noticed these are type of stereotypes, this type of tough, hard, flamboyant person, whereas in the pink, the posher, very maybe prestigious speaker. Okay, so the pink would be called maybe a posh, whereas the proper Dublin, we would say he uses proper English, it means it's real Dublin, this vernacular type of Dublin speech, yeah, which is kind of tough, aggressive, maybe indexes to criminality, if you like. Okay, so they're a type of 2 stereotypes, which nobody really realizes. They're just ends of a continuum, and within the continuum, you have lots of different styles that people are performing, if you like. Okay, so this word cloud is the type, some of the identities that people performed in the GA club. Okay, and big one, if you see, the biggest one is pillar of society. Means the pillar means they're holding up, and society means these people are they're very involved in the community, and they get involved in community enterprises, and they help lots of people. So this type of identity was very, very prevalent in the GEA club, in the sports club that I studied. And this became it emerged over time, and it became this identity that I looked at and see, well, when they are performing this pillar of society identity, what language do they use? So that was my type of starting point. Let me just look at the time. Okay. So, yeah. So let me just come back here. So if we had the proper Dublin and the Prof, if we're going to talk about the vowel, remember we talked about the price vowel, okay? So we had the right, which is high in the front, or right, which is back and retracted, okay? So low and retracted, apologies, okay? So the right, you would have that's proper Dublin. That's what's connected. Whereas the right, that's something you would maybe hear a speaker in a newscaster, or maybe it is slightly connected with the posh identity. Okay, so what I want to know, okay, we have talked a lot about type of identities that exist in your context. How are these identities indexed to sociophonetic variants? So I think Reem, who was talking to me, was maybe part of the phonetic element was the intonation, the pitch, right? So it was a lot gentler, or maybe we talked about smooth sounds. Okay, and let me look at the chat. Okay, men tend to take the lead in the presence of women. Okay, their language reflects that attitude. So if people are taking the attitude, taking the lead, will they use a particular phonetic variant? Dina, I haven't talked to you yet today.
Oh, yeah. Hello again.
Hi.
Now we are just talking about the types of identities that exist in my context. Okay,
Yeah, well,
so I want to reflect on the types of social classes. Okay,
okay.
that's the big umbrella. I would really like to comment on the lower class or the working class in a society. So those people have low education, low income, low status of jobs. Yes. So they might have some kind of a variation in using the language and using words, the way they pronounce. So if you get to see one example, in English, we say what, the word what. In Arabic, in the modern standard Arabic, we say meda. So if I'm in upper class people, they say naam, afandim. But if we move to the lower class, I would really raise my tone, raise my pitch voice, and I say AI is A. Okay, do you see the difference? Do you see the I know the meaning is not clear for some people. I don't know, but you might distinguish the difference in the way I talk. Okay, so if I say meda, nam, and then suddenly I say AI is A. Okay, so there is a difference, and this reflects on the social class. And then
this is lexical. You're using a different word, right?
No, this is no. There is no difference in the words. You mean okay. Yes, I'm using different words, but they give the same meaning, and the difference lies in the tone.
Yeah, most definitely. I can hear it. Okay.
Okay.
I have no understanding of Arabic, but most definitely I can hear it. Yeah. And
well,
so,
I can I comment here? Actually, I just have one comment for Dina. Well, I agree with you to an extent, but the thing is that sometimes when you say this it does not reflect the social class, but it does reflect the psychological state. Maybe you are a bit frustrated, so you're going to raise your tone and say AIZ.
okay, instead of saying naam, okay, and sometimes you say naam, okay, it's the same word but you raise your tone, so it's maybe it reflects the psychological state rather than the social status, you know.
Okay, Yomna, but the point is that I sometimes get myself involved in the local districts around the city, so I get to see different people. Okay, so if they differ in the level of education or the job status or income, I get to see the level in using the language, and then I understand that this belong to this social class or that social class, you know. So it's I do not think. I mean, for myself, I do not think that this belongs to the psychological state, as you said, but. Depending on the social class, which is the big umbrella I'm describing, the sociolinguistic or the language variation,
Yeah,
you
but
know.
there's I understand and I take that on, but there is no reason why if you did go and collect data and maybe if you looked at one person and you compared their psychological state means regular, distressed, irritated, maybe their language use would differ.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Everything is correct, you know. But I'm just specifying the situation itself.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Yomna.
May I comment? Say just a very small comment.
Go ahead.
Well, I do agree with both Dina and Yumna, but I would say maybe the context of what an A or NAM or what was the example was, maybe it wasn't that accurate. Okay, maybe yes, there are some examples that when people reply with, maybe they do show the social class. But I would say that the example that was used here, maybe it is a little bit, how can I say this? It doesn't fit that much the situation. But I do agree with what both of them are saying, but I feel like the examples needed to be more into place. Maybe.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
Okay, but this was but this is the reasons why I'm asking these questions is that we have disagreement about how these are used. How are you going to find them out? Do a study and to see, oh, is this class or is it context? Or is it if we're coming back to the levels of social reality, is it the macro, is it class, or is it social group, and that's the meso, or is it micro, the meaning that you want to communicate in speech? Are you want to show that you're irritated or distressed, or you want to show authority? So, and there's probably all of those possible interpretations are correct. So the only way to really do it is to conduct a study, or maybe you don't have to conduct a study, conduct your own little micro study and to see how people are using it. Now that you have it in your head, oh, I wonder how people use this. Okay, so that's what I want to say there. Okay, okay, let me go on. And what I'm going to do now is we've talked a little bit about Dublin. Okay, what I'm going to do is to show you, to show you the area where I'm right now. I'm in here, around here. Okay, this is quite a small area. This is one postal area of Dublin. So from the western border to the eastern border is about 2.5 kilometers. It's quite a small area. Okay, so you can see the deep orange. This is very, very disadvantaged areas, fortunately. Okay. Then you have lots of areas which are average, maybe below average. Then you have, if you go 1 kilometer, maybe 1 or 2 kilometers, you get into areas which are classified as very affluent. This is one of the affluent areas in Ireland, if not Europe. Okay. So, so you can see the area is quite heterogeneous in terms of I don't want to use social class, but financial means most definitely. Okay, so there is, just to show you that people, you know, we have I classified area 1, area 2, and area 3, and then you have people are aware of, you know, you have area P, area 2, 1, well off and working class in area 3, and even then you can see the one at the bottom. You can tell where they are from just by listening to them talk, right? So this is maybe an indication of how people feel about this. Okay, even if then how people think about the sports that people play. The sports club that I collected data was a GAA club. Okay, they play hurling and football. GAA is Gaelic Athletic Association, so it's Irish games. Okay, so here people see, you know, they feel a grounded area. But then the rugby is with the higher end of society. Then you have the soccer. This is maybe the lower end of society. So even the games that you play reflects people's interpretation of of your social reality, if you like. Okay. So these, then even about the ways of speaking. Okay. So this is maybe what you will see many people talk about. The club that I looked at was in Club Fingal. Okay. They would say we have a very neutral Dublin accent. It's not the proper Dublin. All right. It's not the posh. It's in between. Okay. And we know if we're going back to these areas, the posh type of speech would be indicated with this area 1. Then the proper Dublin be indicated around area 3. Okay. And then kind of in between after that. Okay. So this was just to show you that there is the area is quite heterogeneous in terms of both the sports that are played and the indexes to the sports, and also the financial means. And so this was a very interesting area to do a study in. And now I'm just going to get into a bit more the analytical maneuvers, the data and analytical maneuvers, which led to this was my argument. Okay, that let me change my control so I can see it. That positions of knowledge and authority are indexed by a low and a back price variant. So the speakers here, they don't use they're not posh, they're not proper Dublin either. They're in between, but the low and the back price variant typically is indexed with a posh. The right, that is typically indexed with a posh style of speaking. Okay, the right. Okay, the high in the front. Oh, right. That's proper Dublin. Okay, so I put all of the speakers in the club used both those variants. Okay, but then I needed to see. Okay, I needed to need to highlight the patterns of variation. All of the speakers use the high in the front and the low in the back. They all use it. Okay, so that's my unit of analysis. Okay, then I needed to examine its distribution, interpret patterns of variation to understand a better understanding of the relationship between linguistic variance and the social side of interactions. So that's kind of where I'm going towards. Okay, is there a point of clarification I need to go before I get onto that? Reem, did you have your hand up or?
No, not me. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll go ahead. So what I'm going to do now is introduce how I came to the unit of analysis. My unit of analysis, I'll get to that. Okay, and then how I led on to that. So this is kind of methodology. Okay, so let me see. I'll stop my share and let me see if you can hear the sound. Yeah, you can actually hear the sound. Okay, so you could probably hear the difference in the two vowels. Okay, but two people saying night. Okay, it's more about night. Okay, so the first one, these are kind of popular. The first one here. Okay, so that's kind of more of a posher one. Okay, so there's the literature would tell you those are the popular, the significant variants. Okay, and the proper Dublin would be front and high. This one. And then the south side, as one of people said, the posher one or the posh one would be low and back. Okay, so I conducted 14 1-hour one-to-one interviews, and I collected 14 or 200 examples, over 200 examples of this, and these are a scatter plot of them. Okay, so the red is your high in front, okay, and then you have the low in the back. Okay, so that's just height. Okay, so I could classify them according to that. Okay, then I just needed to do linguistic statistical analysis, and this was quite complicated because you had three types of predictors, and the statistical analysis will feed all of the possible predictors in, and then they will tell you at the end which is most likely to predict that variation. The variation, that's the variation. We can see that the blue line there. Okay, so we know there is a correlation. So, but what is driving that correlation? And that's what the statistical analysis is trying to do. There's lots of linguistic indicators. There's lots of social attributes which fed from my ethnography. Okay, so the background choices, attitudes of the people who are producing these. Then you have the stance taking or the interaction element predictors. Okay, the one that became significant was actually type of talk. Okay, so this was all from the interviews, but there I classified the interviews into the talk in the interviews into three types of talk. There's a dressing room where they're talking about what happened in the dressing room and what happened during the game. So because they're tough games, so there's a lot more aggression in this type of talk. Whereas information is when they are telling me information about the club. I was a long way away from the club, so I did not know fully how the club operated, and I asked lots of questions about that. And then there's social, which is, what did you do the weekend? How are things? So things like that. Okay, so those are the three main types of talk. Okay, and basically we found that type of talk was the most significant. Okay. And then I try and see, well, okay, that was my unit of analysis. Okay. And then I examined its distribution. So first I compared it across dressing room talk, information talk, and social talk. And you can probably see the high in the front, the aggressive one, proper Dublin, right. It dominates the dressing room talk. When people were talking about what happened in the dressing room, they used the right a lot more. Okay. But if we look at the information, there's a lot more low and back, right. There's a lot more of the posh variant there. Okay. And then this, if we compare this, we found the clusters. This is one speaker, and this is their realization, and this basically captures where their tongue was when they realized the vowel. Okay. And when they were giving information, there was always low. Yeah. So it's we can always, and then we can see this pattern in a lot of speakers when they are giving information. Maybe this is better. When they are giving information, they use this low and back a lot more. Okay. So this maybe here, I'm just coming back to the analytical movers. Okay. So led to argue that positions of knowledge and authority are indexed by this low and back price variant. Okay. First, you identify the unit of analysis, type of talk, and it's information talk, right? Okay. Then we looked at examined the distribution. So we've done that, and we see that information talk correlates with, when people are giving me information, they tend to use the low and the back variant more. Okay. So then I really dug into the qualitative discourse analysis. Let me I'm just checking the time. Okay. So I'm going to give you a quick run through of the type of discourse analysis I done. And basically what I done was interpret patterns of variation to create a better understanding of relationship between the variance and the social side. Okay. So what I looked at is when people were talking and when they used this low and back variant, I looked at the type of talk used, the stance, like it is aggressive, friendly. What is it? Type of persona? Is it, I know everything about the club? Or is it, I'm not involved in the club? So this type of persona. Or is it power relationship? Power relationship was to do with, if I asked them to give me information, they said, okay, yeah, this is all about the club, and I know all about the information. Or as, no, you know more than me. I don't know much about the club. So that's P plus and P minus. P minus means you have more power than me or more knowledge than me. P plus means you have more power. I have more power. I have more knowledge than you. Okay. So I kind of looked at this across all of the analysis they've done. Okay. And then through analyzing all of these examples, I came up with 3 discourse functions of this when people use the low and the back variant. So if, for example, we talk about shop, okay? Shop used right 20 times in his interview. Every time it was high in front. except for 3 times. The 3 times he used it was when you can see the example here. Shop. Okay, the first night this was the first night when we returned back to training. We did a kilometer, and this he explained about how they done sprints to get the fitness back. Okay, I didn't know anything about this, and I kept on asking about the information. And when at the end, okay, this is how we done the training, and only then did he use the low on the back. The rest of the time, it was high in front. Okay, all up here, if you see in the red. But then, only when he used talk gave me information did he use the low on the back. So that's where I'm getting at the position of authority, the position of knowledge. When people are using the position of knowledge, they indicate that through the language. And that's the sign. We talked about semiotics. It's a sign. They want to signal that they're giving me information. They signal that they have more power. They have more knowledge than me by using a particular type of language, a particular vowel. They don't use it other times, but you only use it that time. And that's a pattern that was found throughout my data, and which I think is really interesting. I don't know if you find it very interesting, but it's something else you could do, okay? For of course any context, to see when people are putting or showing you a sign that they are angry, or they're have more knowledge than you, or they're taking control. What type of language do they use? In this case, it's phonetics, and lots of you automatically go to lexical words, type of words that they use, but the phonetics is a huge point too. The intonation, the pitch, really is a great indicator of, I think someone said psychological state. Yeah, most definitely. Okay. And then I had other functions. Maybe I'll just focus on that function there. Okay. Just to infer a position of knowledge and authority, and we shown Shop. His name is Shop, but that's the name that I gave him. That he only when he shows that he has a position of knowledge or authority does he use a particular type of the language. Okay. So, and then we had other quoting, but we won't get to that. Yeah, and you could track this, and maybe this is too complicated. Okay. For the talk that I'm giving now. Okay. But if you wanted, you could track and say, okay, you could track all of the elements. That's the price variance. It's lower, subtracted, it's back. Okay. So it's type of talk, what's happening in interaction, the type of talk, persona, stance, power relationship, K minus, K is knowledge, okay? Or is it social environment? The linguistic market, socioeconomic means. So what is this? What are the signs being shown, and what is important in the interactional identity? That's kind of what that graphic is showing you. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to finish up in the next 5 or 6 minutes, but the purpose of today was to show how a sociolinguistic study could be conducted. Okay, so as I've indicated in all of the talk today, the green indicates parts where you can think about your own context, right? Okay, so you could think about analytical maneuvers which could lead to argue that positions of X are indexed by Y. So in my case, positions of authority or knowledge are indexed by a low and a back price variant. Okay. Then you will probably need to go on and look at statistical results. Okay, you could brainstorm a probable unit of analysis. And then after you've identified a pattern or the unit, you predict its distribution, then find the patterns, then maybe do some detailed qualitative analysis. So you're not just stopping and saying, oh, yeah, we found this chart. Okay, I'll go back. Okay, you're not just stopping there and say, oh, look, we have more low and back end information. You're actually digging in to the data and you're seeing, well, what exactly people are doing at the time when they use this social linguistic variant. Okay, so that's one thing I want to focus on there. Okay, and maybe you will get the slides, and maybe this will maybe one thing that you can get at. Okay, and now coming back to this slide, and I'm not sure if I connected with this, but what I want to see is that, okay, we most definitely in that it's the variation where shop was talking. Okay, yeah, we had the micro, the interactional possession, right? That he had more knowledge than me. Then we had the macro level. It's a type of masculinity. He's performing a type of masculinity there. Okay, I'll go back to this slide. Okay, it's type of powered gendered stereotype. It's power. Knowledge is power. Okay, then we go back to the meso. Okay, maybe if you remember, we talked about this pillar of society who's heavily involved in the community. Okay, so because Shop knew all about how they done the training, and his father was doing the training actually, you can tell that he is someone who is heavily involved in the club. So this indicates the type of social group he's involved with. So in that one instance of talk, you can get this culturally grounded semiotic practice. He's showing me that he has more knowledge and power. Great, that's the interactive position, but it's also the macro powered masculinity. And it's also indexed to a particular type of identity in Dublin. And that's kind of where I want to emphasize there. Okay, so if you do, or if you are conducting any type of social linguistic study, even if it's for your own entertainment, to see how people are speaking, I would encourage you to, at the beginning or at the end, to somehow see the type of signals in language and how they are connected with the macro level, whether it be masculinity, femininity, or social class, or it be micro, means are they indicating irritation or indicating authority, or indicating control, or is it to do with the type of social group that they're working with? Okay, yeah. Now I will share these slides with you. Okay, and there is further work about word final T, which has very, very similar results. Okay, and where the slit T, right, is very much dominated by information talk. Okay, and maybe it's pragmatics. There's a lot more pragmatics in the word final T. How it's subjectively expressing a response to preceding discourse. But I don't really have the time right now. If I started that, I could be here all day. Okay, and maybe what I want to say is, yeah, always in a social linguistic study, always be thinking about the different social levels. And this comes back to the waves of social linguistics. You have wave one, which is to do with social class. Wave two, which is social groups. Wave three, which is the individual and the type, what they are doing at that particular time. They're all connected. You cannot take the individual away out of society, and they're always grounded as a male or a female or whatever the way they want to perform, and they're always somehow working with the groups in society, and at any time they're always trying to perform a particular type of a interactional position of authority, position, power. So even if it's just for yourself, when you are listening to people talk, and we had several people talk about, oh, this is how they use that, and some people disagreed. Go back and see, can you see those three levels? And what are the levels? And maybe this is moment by moment. I presented that knowledge of the example of shop, where he only in that instant did he use that one type of variant to indicate power. So it's moment by moment, and that's really but a third wave of sociolinguistics is really interesting that way. It's hard to do, and for the third wave you need the first and second wave. You need to know and have a good idea about the macro level, and you need to know about the meso level in order to understand the micro level, and they all interact with each other. So sorry, I've been talking a lot there, but it's something that I could talk about a lot. And what I will do next is I'll send that from my email, my 2 slides from today, and I will be happy to take any questions now or later by email. So thank you. I enjoyed the participation today because it was really interesting for me to hear about the situation in the Arabic language. And I'm sure you probably only scraped underneath the surface, and you could probably find a lot more. And I know there is Arabic social linguistics is a really developing field that they know that there's a lot more to be studied. So thank you.
Thank you very much.